Developing tonight, growing anger with the New York Times after the paper that went out of its way to protect the feelings of Muslims has now published a very ugly image of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. The paper decided to run a portrait featuring the now retired Benedict that is fashioned from 17,000 condoms. We've decided not to show it. Ironically, the Times went with the picture just 5 months after it chose not to show the cartoon pictures of Muhammad that led to a deadly attack on a French satire magazine, Charlie Hebdo. Mark Thiessen is the Fox News contributor and former chief speechwriter to President George W. Bush. This is what they say. They say, we don't want to gratuitously offend anyone's deeply held beliefs. That said, it's probably impossible to avoid ever offending anyone.
It's remarkable. And this is pure and utter hypocrisy on the part of the New York Times. After the Charlie Hebdo attack, when they refused to republish those cartoons, which were, by the way, very newsworthy because they were related to a major terrorist incident, the Times executive editor, Dean Beckett, was absolutely self-righteous about it. He said, I'm going to tell you what he said, he was doing it out of deference to his Muslim readers. And he said, we have a standard that is long held and serves us well, that there's a line between gratuitous insult and satire. Most of these were gratuitous insults. Under Times standards, he said, we do not normally publish images or other material deliberately intended to offend religious sensibilities. Does a picture of the Pope made out of condoms deliberately offend religious sensibilities? Of course it does.
They now deny that.
Pure hypocrisy.
They now deny that and say that the artist and the museum both say it's not intended to offend people, but to raise a social question about the fight against AIDS. And they go on, Mark, here it is. They go on to say this. Okay, this is Associate Managing Editor for Standards, Phil Corbett, who says, and I quote, while some people might genuinely dislike this work, there doesn't seem to be any comparable level of outrage to what we saw in the Muslim community with the Prophet Muhammad. What? Of course there's not. The Muslim community to whom he's referring killed people. I mean, he's saying that the Catholic community needs to rise up and threaten to kill people in order to get the Pope honored by not showing him covered in condoms?
Yeah, apparently if Catholics don't show up at the New York Times with Uzis, then they're fair game. I mean, this is just ridiculous. The fact that they're basically afraid of terrorism is just why they didn't do this. But look, they said when it came to the Charlie Hebdo cartoons, first of all, those had news value. They were related to a major terrorist attack. And he acknowledged they had news value, but said that is not enough to override our standards. That's a direct quote from him. So this is enough to override the news value of these pictures?
But he was worried when he justified that not running the Charlie Hebdo. He said, let's not forget the Muslim family in Brooklyn who reads us, and they're offended by any depiction of what they see as the prophet. He said, I don't care about ISIS, but I do care about that family, and it's arrogant to ignore them.
Yeah, what about the Catholic family in Brooklyn who reads the New York Times, who are loyal readers of the New York Times, and are offended by a picture of the Pope made out of condoms? Is it arrogant to ignore them? And by the way, Megan, this is not the first time they've done this. They've done this twice in 1 month. Last month, they republished a picture of a painting of the Virgin Mary covered with elephant dung surrounded by pornographic pictures. That was a big controversy in 1999 when it was an exhibit in the Brooklyn Museum. They just reprinted it last month. So this is something that's ongoing, and they've done this not just to Catholics, not just to Christians. They've done it to Jews. They've reprinted anti-Semitic cartoons from Iranian websites in stories about. There was a Holocaust cartoon festival in Tehran, so they published the cartoons. So they'll publish the cartoons that are anti-Semitic, anti-Catholic, that are bigoted, but they won't publish the Charlie Hebdo pictures, which actually had news value.
This is what Dean Beckett told the Washington Examiner about about Muhammad images. He said, was it hard to deny our readers these images? Absolutely. But we still have standards, and they involve not running offensive material.
Yeah, they have no standards.
To whom? Yeah. That's the question.
The New York Times has no standards. If you're a Catholic or a Jew, you're fair game for the New York Times.
Because there's no comparable level of outrage by the Catholics and the Jews versus what we see in the Muslim community when you run Muhammad.
Exactly.
You have to apparently start threatening people in order to get your own religious icons respected. Mark, good to see you.